what was reported on Israeli media on Channel 12 and on CBS News in the United States, that the United States and Israel are preparing to launch what could be, their most extensive bombing campaign yet against Iran's energy infrastructure. And the, if they're talking about Saturday and Sunday, they're going to do it tonight and tomorrow night, it seems. And how prepared is Iran for that? And what is the perception of Iran of this sort of attack if that happens?
Well, the Iranians have prepared themselves for this situation, and they've said that they will destroy the uh, electrical power plants, the energy infrastructure of countries across the region in retaliation. And I think it's clear as day what will happen. These countries will not be able to continue to exist. I mean, there are quite a few people in the Persian Gulf that have the ability to keep their homes, uh, the electricity in their homes, working through these uh, their own private uh, machinery, but ultimately it's that the regimes will fail. There's no possibility that the Emirates will last if they don't have electricity or desalination plants. If they don't have desalination plants in Qatar or electricity, it's just not sustainable. Everyone will have to leave. Again, they may have these mini generators that can work for a few wealthy families or part of the population for a few days, but that's not going to uh, be nearly adequate to sustain society. So people will have to leave. And then, more importantly, uh, when Iran targets the oil and gas facilities, that will be the end of uh, the exports from this region for the years to come. And I believe that that will create a panic on the global markets because until now, the question has been when will the Strait of Hormuz be reopened? And when will the oil and natural gas or LNG and helium and fertilizers and so on get back onto the global markets? And how can the global markets be spared or the global economy be spared from a recession? But once this happens, then I think we're going to see a panic in the markets and collapse because there's no way that Trump or anyone else will be able to manipulate the markets anymore. People will be seeing scenes of burning infrastructure, and it will become clear to everyone that if the Strait of Hormuz is open tomorrow as a result of another MOU or another agreement between Iran and the United States, it won't really matter anymore. There will be nothing left to export. These countries will have collapsed and their facilities will have been badly damaged or destroyed. So, what the United States is threatening to do basically in the next couple of days alongside the Zionist regime, because at the end of the day, it's the Zionist regime that's behind it. It's not the United States. It's the Zionist lobby, the Israeli regime. We're seeing their um, propagandists in the United States pushing day and night for all out war. I was just on Piers Morgan, and they were advocating all out war against Iran. It's clear that the force behind the driving force behind this conflict is the Israeli regime. But if this, I think it's clear to the Americans that this will be catastrophic for the global economy and the U.S. economy. But it appears, I mean, if this happens, it's clear that the United States has accepted its own uh, depression, accepted having an economic depression and economic ruin for the sake of the Zionist lobby. It's not going to end well for the Israeli regime because ultimately people across the world are going to recognize who has brought about this catastrophic situation. Because an economic depression is going to affect you in Brazil, it's going to affect people in Japan, it's going to affect people in South Africa, it's going to affect people in Argentina, in Nigeria. No one is going to be spared. And everyone will know who brought this about. It was Trump and Netanyahu and the forces that push the United States, meaning Zionism and the Zionist regime, towards this economic cliff. So we'll have to see. I mean, last night in Iran, some people were awake at night and to see what will happen. I did get up for morning prayers, and nothing. Obviously, nothing happened. So I went back to sleep. But some of my friends were up till then, and they were waiting to see what would happen. But we'll have to wait and see what happens tonight. I mean, I would have thought that they would do this last night after the markets closed, because tonight and tomorrow night is right, would be when the markets begin to reopen in Asia. But nothing is nothing would surprise me anymore. Nothing surprises me, and it will be very difficult for the United States and the Israelis to destroy Iran's critical infrastructure, because Iran has a large number of power plants across the country. It will cause damage. It will cause electricity shortages. But it's much more. It's much easier for Iran to do huge damage, because all of the, as you know, and as your viewers know, all of the assets of the regimes that are collaborating with the United States against Iran are right alongside the shores of the Persian Gulf. Their oil facilities, their gas facilities, their power plants, their um, desalination plants. They're very easily accessible. And then, of course, this is without including the uh, the reality that Yemen has been provoked into war by the Saudis for some very foolish reason. It is said that the Americans pushed them in that direction, but the Saudis have provoked Yemen into waging war, and of course, the Yemeni people are now demanding an end to the barbaric siege. The irony now is, of course, that the Saudis are creating this coalition of countries who want to help Saudi Arabia preserve this barbaric siege. And most of these countries did participate, or many of them did participate, when the Saudis began the genocidal war against Yemen. They supported the Saudis from the very beginning, and they assisted in the starvation of the people of Yemen and the slaughter of the children of Yemen for years. Some of them, of course, later tilted away from Saudi Arabia after the Saudis besieged Qatar. Qatar and Turkey moved away, not for reasons of principle, but because of the conflict that they had, that Qatar had with the Saudis and the Emirates, not because of any feelings towards the people of Yemen. But this coalition is not going to succeed. What are they going to do? They can't stop Yemeni drones, and they can't stop Yemeni missiles, and they can't invade Yemen. So they don't have the capabilities of the United States, and of course, people are going to be asking each and every one of those coalition members, "What did you do for Gaza? Why is there no coalition to support the people of Gaza? Why was there no coalition to support the people of Lebanon? Why is there no coalition to put pressure on the Israeli regime?" It's only a coalition is only worth creating when it's an ally of the United States that is being punished for a war that it imposed on the people of Yemen, a genocidal war that it imposed upon the people of Yemen. I mean, these countries may be able to mobilize a segment of their societies to support renewing the genocide against Yemen, or renewing this the Saudi war against or strengthening the Saudis in their war against the Yemeni people. But a lot of people are going to become increasingly skeptical about those governments that participate. Now we'll have to see if anyone actually does, because the Saudis have announced this coalition, but it's not going to work. It's going to do is it's going to humiliate anyone who is seen assisting the Saudis against the besieged people of Yemen. But in any case, they've awoken Yemen, and now the strikes on Iraq have created outrage across Iraq. And the Iraqi resistance says they're going to punish the Saudis after Arba'in, after the 40th day, after the ceremonies marking the 40th day after the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, the grandson of the Holy Prophet. So it's strange how Saudi Arabia brought this upon itself. First, bombing an international airport in Yemen, and then bombing Iraq, even though Yemen said very openly that we fired drones and missiles at Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia said, no, it wasn't Yemen, it was the resistance in Iraq. And the belief here in Iran is that the Saudis are blaming Iraq because they're afraid to confront Yemen. So they're like seeking some other entity to strike. And of course, most of the strikes were carried out by the Americans. But what they've succeeded in doing is angering the Iraqi people, especially near Arba'in, where the people in Iraq are focused on commemorating the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, his struggle against the despot of his era in support of the press, and it makes people see the parallels. So this is not going to end well. If the United States attacks Iran and escalates, this will be catastrophic for the world economy. And I think many people just simply don't know what's about to hit if this happens.
You mentioned the case of Iraq. Even we had the statement on the part of the Iraqi resistance, and they said, we didn't do that. We didn't attack. We didn't use the drones against Saudi Arabia. But nobody seems to care in Saudi Arabia about what they're talking about. And the other point is the attacks on Egypt. 2 American ships were attacked in Egypt. They said, New York Times came out with an article saying that Iran is behind this. Then we had Iranian foreign minister coming out and said, we didn't do this. We don't need to do this. And maybe some people are arguing some of these attacks are false flag operations. What is happening, particularly with the case of Egypt? Was it Iran?
Well, I obviously cannot say who it was. I have no idea. But you do know that a number of cells linked to Ukraine were arrested in Iraq, and they were firing drones at different groups in Iraq, opposing groups. So they fired drones at supporters of Iran. They fired drones at supporters of the United States. They fired drones at and it was clear from their actions that they were trying to create conflict and internal strife. And so they were just carrying out false flag operations. And it wasn't, as I said, it wasn't targeting one particular side. It was targeting different political entities to bring about, I suppose, civil war. So you can imagine that this sort of thing could happen in Egypt. It could happen in Saudi Arabia. Although, I mean, the Yemeni armed forces, they took responsibility. They claimed responsibility for strikes on the Saudi oil industry on 2 separate days. The Saudis, when they failed to acknowledge that, and then on the subsequent day, the Saudis spoke of drones coming from Iraq, but there's no evidence of any strike on Saudi facilities that day. So it could be that the Saudis were just making it up, and on the 3rd day nothing happened. But on previous occasions, Yemen said, we did it. And Saudi Arabia just ignored that, said, no, no, it came from Iraq. The Iraqi government says, we have no evidence. The resistance says it has nothing to do with us. And then the Saudis actually bombed bases that belong to the Popular Mobilization Forces that are a part of the Iraqi army. They killed Iraqi soldiers and Iranian soldiers, by the way, Iranian trainers who were there as well. Well, it was the Americans and the Saudis. I should keep reminding people that most of the attacks, strikes were carried out by the Americans. But the point is that there could be a combination of false flag attacks, like in Egypt, perhaps. That's what the Iranians are saying. There could be just also alongside that the foolishness of Saudi Arabia. I mean, the Saudi regime is not known to be one that is very wise. Remember, Mohammed bin Salman, he beat up the Lebanese prime minister, physically beat him up, the former prime minister Hariri. He murdered Jamal Khashoggi, someone who I knew personally, and I'd met many times in different places. He murdered him in their own consulate and got rid of his body in, I think, acid. And it caused an uproar and then pretended that nothing happened. I mean, this is not a wise leadership. Then he started the genocidal war with Obama greenlighting it in Yemen because he considered Yemen to be Saudi Arabia's backyard. And after years of genocidal war, he was forced to accept a ceasefire. And then, of course, he imposed a siege on Qatar, who was his ally. And Iran basically saved Qatar. Iran allowed Qatar to use its airspace and its sea routes to survive. And Qatar, of course, never really returned the favor, did the opposite in the long run. So this is a leader whose history of leadership is full of extraordinarily foolish acts. And then again, going back to Yemen, bombing Sana'a International Airport and carrying out an act of war. I mean, he obviously wanted to prevent Iran from breaking the siege that he imposed on the Yemeni people. But to bomb an international airport as a plane was about to land, a passenger plane, that's not the sign of a sane and wise leadership. But it's a sign of the times because Trump and all the leaders that we're seeing now in the Western world and among their proxies, none of them have shown any sign of wisdom for the last few years, whether for good or for ill. They're just not. They just have. They've been very foolish.
We have, let's assume if the United States together with Israel, finally decide to attack Iran, they have to use Saudi Arabia airspace, Iraqi airspace, all the region. Does that mean that the acts of resistance going to come out together with Iran, Yemen, Iran, and other parts of the acts of resistance to respond to that?
Well, already Yemen is at war with Saudi Arabia. They've created a counter siege. We have to remember that the Saudis have a siege on Yemen and it's been going on for years. Now Yemen has finally imposed a counter siege. And again, in a very bizarre act, a number of countries are joining a Saudi coalition to support Saudi Arabia, despite what it's done to Yemen. It's all about money and resources and that sort of thing, but it's going to fail, and as I said, it's going to demolish the image of those countries, whoever does effectively get involved, if any do. But Yemen is already in, and as I said, the resistance in Iraq said that as soon as Arba'in is over, I was invited to go to a program in Karbala for Arba'in, but I really would have liked to go, but I thought, if the United States attacks Iran, it's best for me to be here. So, but Iraq has said that after Arba'in, they're going to strike back. So it's already and the escalation has already begun. And if the United States attacks Iran, all those countries are in bed with the United States. They don't have to use everyone's airspace. They are all involved. They have U.S. bases. They have assisted the United States from Kuwait, even Oman, let alone Qatar and Bahrain and Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. All of them are complicit. Jordan, and of course the Israeli regime. So the Iranian response will be devastating. As I said, and then you have Iraq and Yemen, which are already in, and they're going to take advantage of that situation as well. This is not an outcome that will end well for the United States. It's just going to lead to collapse. I think that the Arabian Peninsula, the map of the Arabian Peninsula will just change. We're going to have a different future, a different political, where the borders of countries will change. The names of countries will change. This is going to be very big if the United States carries out its threats. If it really moves in that direction, this is going to bring about great change, and of course, it's going to bring about global tragedy. I mean, look at what happened in Morocco, right? Now, in the case of Morocco, this was obviously not organic. This was the Americans and the Israelis who were behind it. There's evidence of this, and so I don't want to get into the Moroccan Spanish history. That's not the issue. The timing is what's important, right? So that's the history of the two countries and the grievances and all that aside. The timing is it makes it clear, and the way in which this operation was carried out to send 50,000 people into Spain, Spanish territory, was of course well organized and well planned. Well, if the United States attacks Iran's critical infrastructure and Iran retaliates, which it will, and then we have global economic collapse because the markets will collapse, then what happens? I think you're going to see that sort of thing, but organic across the world. You're going to see people move on the move in countries where there's no food or where there's no when the economies have collapsed. They're going to move to places which historically have been better off. So I think there will be mass migration in different parts of the world away from centers of poverty. But of course, the problem will be that everywhere will be affected. Everywhere in the world will be moving towards poverty and destitute. So this movement is going to create unbelievable tensions and misery in itself.